Remember to like and subscribe. Horror Through Time, The Ripper Still Walks. Part 1. Fog on Commercial Street. They say London never really sleeps. That is a lie. At 2 in the morning, Whitechapel is quiet and hollow. The city breathes in fog and breathes out sirens. Between the breath and the silence, footsteps decide whether to hurry or to stop. I walk nights with a camera. At first it was a habit. I took pictures for my landlord to prove what he never fixed. Then it turned into something else. I started collecting broken neon signs, foxes in alleys, and the way rain makes brick look like bruised skin. I uploaded them online. People called the pictures moody. I called them honest. The night this began, I was not chasing anything. I had been at the hospital to visit a neighbor. On the way back, I cut through Whitechapel to catch the tube. Fog hung low and soft. Lamps glowed like halos in the wet air. My phone was in my coat pocket, camera ready. That is when I saw the first police car. It moved past without lights, only the faint blue glow inside. Another followed, then a third, quiet in the fog, slow as a shadow. I should have kept walking. Instead, I followed. They stopped at an alley off Commercial Street, the kind of alley too narrow for anything except regret. 2 officers stood at the entrance. Their shoulders were stiff. Their eyes moved too much, scanning as if the fog itself might step forward. Blue tape stretched across the mouth of the alley. A few figures had gathered already. The sleepless, the curious, a drunk who never learned how to mind his own business. I lifted my phone and snapped a photo. Tape. Fog. A lamp hanging like a coin of light on wet cobblestones. "You got a death wish, mate?" a voice muttered. I lowered the phone. "What happened?" I asked. "Same as always," the drunk said. "Only worse." "Same as what?" I asked. He gave me a look, like I had just insulted something sacred. "You know." But I didn't. Not yet. Another car rolled to the curb. This one unmarked. A man and a woman stepped out in thin coats. Detectives. You could tell by the way they wore their silence. The man looked at the alley and winced. Not at the cold, but at what he already knew waited inside. The woman's jaw tightened. She ducked under the tape. The man turned to us. "Go home." His voice was calm, flat, the kind of voice that makes you realize curiosity can get you killed. I went home, but I could not sleep. The next morning the news did what it always does. Cropped photo. A headline with no air in it. Woman found dead in Whitechapel. Police appeal for information. The article was 3 paragraphs of filler. Then one sentence that nailed itself into my head. The victim's wounds resembled those of the infamous Jack the Ripper cases of 1888. The headline burned in my mind. Jack the Ripper. The words felt cheap on a modern screen. Like the internet had dragged an old ghost out for another round of clicks. But the photo that went with the article was not cheap. It showed nothing of the victim, just the tape, the alley, and the faint suggestion of blood that the fog could not hide. I told myself it was a copycat. People have been pretending to be the Ripper for more than 100 years. But something in the drunk man's voice from the night before stayed with me. Same as always. He said it like a rule, not a guess. That evening, I went back. I told myself it was for the camera, that I would take a few shots of the alley, the lamplight, the police tape, something atmospheric. The tape was gone. The alley was open. Damp brick walls leaned toward each other, sweating mist. At the far end, trash bags slumped like dead weight against bins. The cobblestones were slick with rain. But in the corner where the wall met the ground, I saw something darker. A stain that had not washed away. I crouched and lifted my phone. The flash lit the brick. The stain glistened, too dark to be water. "Not a good place to linger," a voice said behind me. I stood too fast. An older man leaned on the wall, a cigarette trembling between his fingers. His coat looked older than me. His eyes were sharp. "You live here?" I asked. "Long enough," he said. He took a drag, smoke hiding his face for a moment. "They always come back here. People who die in Whitechapel don't leave." "Not really." I swallowed. "You think this was the Ripper?" He smiled without humor. Think? Son, I know. I was a boy when I first heard the stories. My father told me the Ripper would walk again. And when he does, the city won't stop him any more than it did back then. I wanted to laugh, wanted to tell him it was nonsense. But my throat stayed tight. He pointed the cigarette toward the alley. She was the first. She won't be the last. Watch the papers. You'll see. He turned and walked into the fog. His steps were slow, measured, like he already knew the rhythm of bad news. That night, I refreshed the news page every hour. Nothing. But at 3 a.m., another headline appeared. Second body found in Whitechapel. My stomach dropped. The article was longer this time. The police called it a disturbing but unrelated act of violence. They told people not to panic. But the details that slipped through were not random. The victim had been found in another narrow street. The wounds were described as surgical. The body had been left displayed, not hidden, displayed. I remembered something I had read years ago, that the original Ripper staged his victims. Not just killed them, but made them into messages. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. Outside my window, the city moved like it always does. Cars in the distance, a fox shrieking like a broken violin. But underneath all that noise, I swore I heard something steadier. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. I held my breath. The sound passed. When I finally lay down, I dreamed of cobblestones wet with blood. And in the fog, a man in a black coat walked without hurry, carrying something sharp in his hand. The next day, the news cycle spun again. A third body had been found. Same area. Same style. The police avoided the word Ripper. But they didn't need to. The city already whispered it for them. I walked past the first alley one last time. The stain on the brick was gone now, scrubbed away, but the air was heavier. The kind of heavy that presses into your lungs and makes you taste iron. As I turned to leave, I saw something tucked under the edge of the bin. A piece of paper folded once. My name was written on the front in blocky, uneven letters. My throat closed as I unfolded it. The handwriting was jagged, rushed, and the ink smeared near the bottom. From hell, we walk again.
No signature.
No date, just the weight of old words dragging themselves into the present. I dropped it. My hands would not stop shaking. And in the silence of the alley, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, measured. When I turned, the fog was empty. Part 2. The pattern returns. The police blamed copycats. They said London was full of troubled minds who liked to mimic famous killers. They said social media made it worse. But the details never matched copycats. The victims were found on almost the same streets as the murders of 1888. Dorset Street, Hanbury Street, Commercial Road. The same paths, like someone was retracing them step by step. And then there were the letters. Not public ones this time. Private. People on forums started posting images of envelopes shoved through their doors. Sloppy handwriting, threats, and always the phrase "from hell." Some were obvious fakes, teenagers with too much time, but some felt older. Faded paper, ink that bled when the rain touched it. One man claimed he caught someone on CCTV outside his flat. Tall, thin, black coat, hat low over his face. The footage glitched the moment the figure looked at the camera. When it returned, the man was gone. I would have dismissed it all if not for what happened next. Another victim, but this time the name was mine. It was not in the paper. It was not online. It was whispered in the alley when I returned, the voice soft and too close. "You are next."
Ispun.
My camera in hand, I took a photo in the fog. The picture showed nothing but mist. But in the corner of the frame where the light bent wrong, there was the outline of a face. Smiling. The photo haunted me. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. Nothing but fog except for that corner. The faint shape of a face that should not have been there. The smile was wide, too wide, stretched like it had been carved in. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a smear on the lens. But deep down I knew better. The next morning I received a knock on my door. Not loud, just 3 even taps. I froze, waiting for it to come again. Instead, a voice spoke through the wood. "Police, open up." I hesitated, then pulled the door open. A man stood there, plain clothes, badge clipped to his belt. Detective Inspector Harker. His face was pale, his eyes tired, as if sleep had abandoned him weeks ago. "You were near the first scene," he said. Not a question, a statement. I nodded. "I was just walking home. I didn't see anything." "You took photos," he said. Again, not a question. I felt my throat tighten. "Only the tape. Fog. Nothing else." His eyes stayed on mine too long. Then he said, "If you notice anything strange, call this number." He slipped a card into my hand. His fingers were cold. As he turned to leave, I asked, "Do you think it's him?" He paused at the stairs. "Who?" "You know who." His jaw tightened. "Copycats get sloppy. This one hasn't." Then he walked away. That night I dreamed again. I was standing in Whitechapel, the fog thick enough to choke on. A man in a black coat walked ahead of me. Each time I tried to catch up, he turned a corner. When I finally reached him, he stood in front of a wall painted with blood, words written in strokes like claws. "Still walking." I woke with my heart hammering. The news reported another body. The victim had been left in Mitre Square, exactly where one of the original murders took place. The details were kept vague, but the word surgical appeared again. And then something else. A photo leaked online. Not of the body, but of the wall near it. A message scrawled in chalk. "The next belongs to him." Beneath the words was a single name. Mine. I stared at the leaked photo until my vision burned. My name on a wall in Mitre Square. Chalk lines, jagged and crude. The internet swarmed it, calling it a hoax. A fake. But I knew it wasn't. I called the number on Harker's card. He answered on the second ring. "You saw it," he said. "You knew this was coming?" I asked. There was silence. Then, "He chooses names, leaves them as promises. We found 5 before yours. All of them ended the same way. Then why am I still breathing? Because he wants you to know." His words sat in my chest like lead. That night I heard the tapping. 3 knocks against my window, even though I lived on the 3rd floor. I didn't look. Couldn't. The glass trembled once, then stilled. When I finally worked up the nerve to check the phone in my hand, I saw a new message. No number, no contact, just words that glowed on the screen, written in a font I had never installed. "From hell, midnight, Commercial Street." The message erased itself before I could screenshot it. I stared into the dark, phone shaking in my hand, and knew I had a choice. Stay inside, wait, and pray, or walk to the place where the Ripper still walked. Horror through time, the Ripper still walks. Part 3, Midnight on Commercial Street. The message had burned itself from my phone, but the words stayed in my head like a song you cannot shake. Midnight, Commercial Street, from hell. I thought about ignoring it. I thought about turning my phone off, staying in bed, and pretending I had never walked through Whitechapel at night. But ignoring the Ripper is the same as inviting him in. That was the thought that kept repeating. You don't get to choose not to play. At 11:30, I left my flat. The streets were quiet. Streetlights hummed, throwing pale circles onto the pavement. The fog was thicker than before, curling low like smoke from a fire that never burned out. Commercial Street waited ahead, a long scar through the heart of Whitechapel. Every brick felt older, heavier. Every shadow seemed to lean closer as I walked. Halfway there, I saw him, Detective Harker, standing by a lamp with his coat collar pulled high. "You came," he said. "You knew I would." He nodded once. His eyes looked worse than before, hollowed out, ringed with sleepless nights. "He wants you to come. That is how it always works." "Always?" I asked. Harker's mouth tightened. "Every few decades, the pattern begins again. Same streets, same wounds, same handwriting. People think it is copycats. It is not. It is him." "How?" I asked. My voice cracked. "He would be over 100 years old." "Older than that," Harker said. "Some things do not die. Some things only wait." I wanted to press him, to demand proof, but the clock on the church tower struck midnight. The sound carried heavy through the fog, each chime like a hammer on bone. When the last bell faded, the footsteps began, slow, deliberate, echoing against the stones. I froze. Harker did not move. His face was pale as wax. Out of the fog, a figure appeared, tall, thin, coat black as soot.
Hat pullet low.
He walked with purpose, like he had never stopped walking since 1888. The Ripper. He stopped 10 paces from us. I could not see his face in full, only the suggestion of it. White, too white, and the grin. The kind of grin that stretched too far, the kind of grin you see on a body that has been cut wrong. Harker's voice was steady, though his hand trembled near his coat pocket. "Stay behind me." The Ripper tilted his head, slow, curious, like a predator watching prey argue about who will run first. Then he spoke. His voice was dry, rasping but clear. "You are late." The words scraped across the fog and sank into my bones. I tried to speak, but my throat locked. Harker stepped forward. "You are done here," he said, voice low. "It ends tonight." The Ripper's grin widened. He raised his hand. In it, steel glimmered faintly, catching the lamplight. Not a knife, a scalpel. Small, precise, the tool of someone who enjoyed patience. The fog thickened. The footsteps of the city seemed to vanish. And in that moment, I knew there was no running. The Ripper's scalpel caught the lamplight again. A small flash, almost beautiful in its simplicity. The kind of beauty you only notice before it cuts. He took one step forward. His shoes tapped against the cobblestones with perfect rhythm. Not hurried, not hesitant. Each step sounded like a decision already made. Harker shifted his stance, one hand brushing his coat as if reaching for something hidden. "Stay back," he said. The Ripper tilted his head further, as if amused. He lowered the scalpel to his side. His other hand slid into his coat pocket. I wanted to move, to run, to scream. My body did none of those things. I stood frozen, as if the fog itself had turned to chains around my arms and legs. The Ripper spoke again, his voice like a blade on stone. "You walk my streets. You carry my name in your mouth. You take my picture." My stomach turned. He knew. Harker stepped forward, closing the space by a fraction. "You don't belong here," he said. The Ripper laughed. Not loud, not mad, just a low, broken sound. A laugh cracked apart by time. "I belong everywhere." He took another step forward, now only 6 paces away. The fog clung tighter, pressing his outline into something sharper, something less human. "Why me?" I forced the words out. My voice was thin, shaking. The Ripper's grin widened. "Because you look. You always look." Harker snapped, "That's enough," and pulled something from his coat. Not a gun. A small wooden cross, worn smooth by years of handling. He held it up as if it were a shield. The Ripper did not flinch. He only leaned closer, his grin bending in the dark. "Do you think what stops me?" The silence that followed was heavy. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Then the Ripper raised the scalpel. The fog closed in tighter, and for the first time his eyes lifted into the light. They were not the eyes of a man. They were pits, black, hollow, and in them something moved, something shifting like smoke, as if the centuries had filled him with nothing but hunger. My legs trembled, my breath locked, and then, without warning, he lunged. The Ripper lunged. The scalpel flashed in the lamplight. Harker shoved me back, the cross dropping from his hand as he reached for the weapon at his hip. Too slow. The Ripper moved faster than a shadow, his blade slicing air inches from Harker's throat. I stumbled against the wall, the stone slick under my palms. My chest heaved, but the fog felt like it was filling my lungs. Harker drew his revolver and fired. The shot cracked like thunder through the street. The muzzle flare lit the fog in bursts of orange. The bullet struck. I saw it hit, but the Ripper did not fall. He only staggered once, as though annoyed, and straightened again. Another step forward. Another slash of steel. Harker blocked with his arm, the blade carving through fabric and skin. He cried out, firing again. This time the bullet tore through the Ripper's chest. The sound it made was wrong, like a stone dropped into deep water. He leaned back, coat flaring, before stepping forward again. The grin never left his face. I forced my body to move, grabbing the wooden cross where it had fallen. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped it. I raised it high, swinging like a club. The Ripper caught my wrist mid-swing. His grip was iron, fingers long and cold as winter. He leaned in close. His breath smelled like rot sealed for centuries. "You were chosen," he whispered. "You do not get to run." I screamed, shoving with everything I had. For a moment, his grip loosened. Harker fired again, the shot cracking inches from my head, striking the Ripper's shoulder. The figure recoiled, coat whipping as if caught in a storm. But instead of blood, smoke poured from the wound. Thick, black, writhing. The Ripper hissed, voice warped. "Not tonight." He slashed once more, grazing Harker's chest, then turned into the fog. His outline stretched thin, dissolving into the mist until only footsteps remained. Slow, measured. Then silence.